The church doors swung open, and the organ's notes faltered as every head turned. Marcus Reed, 28, stood frozen in his navy suit, his breath catching at the sight of a ghost from his past striding down the aisle. Derek Vance, the man who'd shattered his heart 6 years ago, was here, at his wedding. Marcus's pulse thundered. The quaint chapel in Sonoma, California, with its stained glass windows casting rainbows across the pews, felt like it was closing in. He gripped the edge of the altar, his knuckles paling, as Derek's familiar smirk cut through the crowd. Why was he here? Marcus's fiancée, Javier Morales, 29, stood beside him, oblivious to the storm brewing in Marcus's chest. Javier's hand brushed his, a quiet anchor, but it wasn't enough to stop the memories flooding back. Nights of betrayal, lies, and a love that had nearly destroyed him. Who invited him? Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible over the murmurs of the guests. His eyes darted to his mother, Evelyn, seated in the front row, her face serene but unreadable. She'd always loved Derek, hadn't she? Even after everything. The thought twisted like a knife. 6 years earlier, Marcus had been a different man. Younger, more open, believing love was invincible. He'd met Derek at a jazz club in Oakland, where the saxophone wailed and the air smelled of whiskey and possibility. Derek, 30 at the time, was all charm. Tall, with a crooked smile and a voice that could talk anyone into anything. They'd fallen hard, fast, building a life together in a cramped apartment filled with laughter and late-night talks. Marcus had thought it was forever until he found the texts, the photos, the proof that Derek had been living a double life, juggling Marcus with someone else, maybe multiple someones. The betrayal had gutted him, leaving scars he thought he'd buried. Now, standing at the altar, Marcus felt those scars split open. The ceremony hadn't even started, and already the day felt stolen. Javier, sensing the shift, leaned closer. "You okay, amor?" His voice was soft, his brown eyes searching. Marcus forced a nod, but his mind was racing. Derek was here, in a tailored gray suit, sitting 3 rows back like he belonged, like he hadn't left Marcus broken, piecing himself back together for years. The officiant cleared his throat, signaling the start. Marcus's heart pounded as he scanned the room. Friends, family, Javier's cousins from San Diego, all waiting for a moment of joy. But Evelyn's calm smile gnawed at him. She'd always called Derek family. Even after Marcus had told her everything. Had she done this? Had she invited the man who'd nearly ruined him? As the music swelled, Marcus made a choice. He wasn't that naive 22-year-old anymore. He'd built a new life with Javier, a man who loved him fiercely, who'd spent countless nights listening to Marcus's fears and dreams. This wedding was theirs, and no ghost from the past would taint it. But the weight of Derek's presence pressed harder. Marcus knew he couldn't let this go unaddressed. Not today. The ceremony began, but Marcus barely heard the officiant's words. His mind replayed the past. Derek's apologies, his promises to change, the way Marcus had almost believed him. He'd spent years rebuilding his trust, his heart, only to have it tested now, on the day he was supposed to claim his future. Javier's vows came first, each word a lifeline. "Marcus, you taught me that love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice. I choose you, every day, no matter what." The guests sighed, some wiping tears, but Marcus's eyes flicked to Derek, who sat stone-faced, watching. When it was Marcus's turn, his voice trembled at first. "Javier, you're my home. You showed me what it means to be seen, to be enough. He paused, his gaze locking on his mother. Then Derek. The words caught in his throat, but something ignited inside him. He wasn't just speaking to Javier now. He was speaking to everyone who'd ever doubted him, who'd ever made him feel small. The officiant smiled, ready to move on, but Marcus held up a hand. I need to say something else. The room stilled. Javier's brow furrowed, but he nodded, trusting. Marcus stepped forward, his voice steadying. Today isn't just about love. It's about truth. And there's a truth I need to share before we go any further. Gasps rippled through the chapel. Evelyn's smile faltered. Derek shifted in his seat, his smirk gone. Marcus felt Javier's hand squeeze his, grounding him. Whatever came next, he was ready. The vineyard outside the chapel glowed under the late afternoon sun, rows of grapevines stretching toward the horizon. Marcus and Javier had chosen this place for its beauty, its promise of new beginnings. They'd spent months planning, dreaming of a day filled with laughter and love. But now, as Marcus stood at the altar, his heart was a battlefield. Derek's presence wasn't just a surprise. It was a violation, and Evelyn's role in it, whatever it was, stung deeper than he could say. He turned to the crowd, his voice clear now. 6 years ago, someone broke me. Not just my heart, but my trust, my belief in myself. That person is here today. Whispers erupted, heads swiveling. Derek's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. Marcus continued, I don't know why he's here, but I know this. I'm not that person anymore. I fought to become someone stronger, someone who loves without fear. And I owe that to the man standing beside me. Javier's eyes glistened, his hand still in Marcus's. The guests were silent, hanging on every word. Marcus's mother shifted in her seat, her hands clasped tightly. He couldn't read her expression. Guilt? Defiance? He didn't care. This moment was his. I'm not here to dwell on the past, Marcus said, his voice rising. But I won't let it steal this day. Javier, you're my future. And to anyone who thinks they can disrupt that, his eyes locked on Derek's. You're wrong. The chapel was electric, every guest leaning forward. Derek's face was unreadable, but Marcus didn't need his reaction. This wasn't about Derek anymore. It was about claiming his own story. The officiant, sensing the tension, gently prompted them to continue. Marcus exhaled, turning back to Javier. Let's do this, he whispered. Javier grinned, squeezing his hand. The vows resumed, but the air had changed. Marcus felt lighter, like he'd shed a weight he hadn't known he was carrying. The guests applauded, some cheering, as the officiant pronounced them partners for life. But the day wasn't over. As the reception began in the vineyard's open-air pavilion, Marcus knew the real confrontation was coming. Derek hadn't left, and Evelyn's silence was louder than ever. He glanced at Javier, who was laughing with his cousins, unaware of the storm still brewing. Marcus steeled himself. Whatever truth was out there, he'd face it head-on. The reception was alive with music and chatter, fairy lights twinkling above the vineyard's wooden tables. Marcus sipped his wine, his eyes scanning the crowd. Javier was dancing with his sister, Elena, their laughter cutting through the soft jazz. But Marcus's focus was elsewhere, on Derek, who lingered near the bar, and Evelyn, who was chatting with guests but avoiding her son's gaze. Marcus set his glass down, his resolve hardening. He'd exposed Derek in the chapel, but the why still gnawed at him. Why was Derek here? Why had Evelyn, of all people, allowed it? He crossed the pavilion, weaving through guests, until he reached his mother. We need to talk, he said, his voice low but firm. Evelyn's smile faded, but she nodded, following him to a quiet corner near the vine-covered trellis. The air smelled of earth and grapes, a stark contrast to the tension between them. "Why is he here, Mom?" Marcus asked, his voice steady but sharp. "Did you invite him?" Evelyn's eyes flickered, but she didn't flinch. "Marcus, she hesitated, her hands smoothing her dress. "I thought it was time to let go of the past. Derek reached out a few months ago. He said he'd changed, that he wanted to make amends." Marcus's chest tightened. "Amends? He cheated on me, lied to me, broke me. And you thought inviting him to my wedding was a good idea?" His voice rose, drawing a few glances from nearby guests. He lowered it, but the anger stayed. "You knew what he did to me. Why would you do this?" Evelyn's face softened, but there was a stubborn glint in her eyes. "I raised you to forgive, Marcus. Derek was part of our family once. I thought maybe seeing you happy would help him heal, too." "Heal?" Marcus laughed, bitter. "This isn't about him. This is my day, Mom. Mine and Javier's." He took a step back, shaking his head. "You should have told me." Before Evelyn could respond, Javier appeared, his smile fading as he sensed the tension. "Everything okay?" he asked, his hand finding Marcus's. Marcus forced a smile. "Yeah, just family stuff." But Javier wasn't fooled. His eyes flicked to Evelyn, then back to Marcus, a silent question. Marcus squeezed his hand. "I'll fill you in later." The night pressed on, but the joy of the reception felt tainted. Marcus danced with Javier, their bodies swaying under the stars, but his mind was elsewhere. Derek hadn't approached him yet, but his presence was a shadow Marcus couldn't shake. As the band played a slow song, Javier pulled Marcus close. "You're not here with me," he murmured. "What's going on?" Marcus sighed, his forehead resting against Javier's. "It's Derek. He's here and my mom invited him. She thought it would fix things." The words tasted sour. Javier's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "Do you want me to talk to him? Or her?" "No," Marcus said quickly. "This is my fight." But as he said it, he realized it wasn't just his. Javier was his partner now in every sense. "Actually, let's do it together." After the toasts. The toasts were a blur of heartfelt words and laughter. Javier's best man, his cousin Diego, told stories of their childhood in San Diego, making the crowd roar. Marcus's sister, Kayla, spoke of his resilience, her voice breaking as she called him her hero. But when it was Marcus's turn to take the mic, the weight of the day settled on him. He stood, glass in hand, the crowd's eyes on him. "I wasn't sure I'd ever get here," he began, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "Love, it's not easy. It breaks you sometimes, but it also builds you back up." His eyes found Javier, who smiled, grounding him. "Javier, you're my reason to believe in it again. But tonight, I need to address something else." The crowd quieted, sensing the shift. Marcus's gaze landed on Derek, who stood at the edge of the pavilion, drink in hand. "There's someone here who hurt me deeply, someone I thought I'd left behind. But tonight, I'm choosing to let that go, not for him, but for me, for us." He raised his glass to Javier, who nodded, his eyes shining. The guests applauded, but Marcus wasn't done. He turned to Evelyn. "Mom, I love you, but you need to understand. My past isn't yours to fix. This day belongs to me and Javier, and no one else." Evelyn's face crumpled, but she nodded, tears in her eyes. As Marcus stepped down, Javier pulled him into a fierce hug. "You're incredible," he whispered. But the night wasn't over. Derek was still there, and Marcus knew a confrontation was inevitable. The vineyard's lights cast long shadows as the reception continued. Marcus and Javier moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations, but Marcus's eyes kept drifting to Derek. He was talking to a guest, his laugh too loud, too familiar. Marcus's stomach churned. He didn't want to give Derek power over this day, but ignoring him felt impossible. Javier noticed. "You want to handle this now?" he asked, his voice low. Marcus nodded. "Yeah, let's end this." They approached Derek, who turned, his smile faltering as he saw them. "Marcus," he said, his voice smooth but cautious. "Congratulations. You look happy." "Don't." Marcus cut him off. "Why are you here, Derek?" Derek's eyes flicked to Javier, then back to Marcus. "Your mom thought." "My mom was wrong," Marcus said, his voice like steel. "You don't get to show up and act like nothing happened. You broke me, Derek, and I rebuilt myself without you." Derek's face softened, but there was no remorse in his eyes. "I made mistakes, Marcus, but I cared about you. I still do." Javier stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "You don't get to care about him anymore. He's mine now, and I don't play games with his heart." The words hit Marcus like a wave. He'd spent years wondering if he'd ever be enough for someone. Hearing Javier claim him so fiercely, so unapologetically, made his chest ache with gratitude. He took Javier's hand, squeezing it. "You heard him," Marcus said to Derek. "We're done here." Derek opened his mouth, but no words came. He nodded once, then turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Marcus exhaled, feeling lighter than he had all day. Javier pulled him close, their lips meeting in a kiss that drowned out the music, the guests, the past. But Evelyn was still there, watching from a distance. Marcus knew their conversation wasn't over. She'd crossed a line, and trust, once broken, wasn't easily mended. As the night wound down, he resolved to face her again, not out of anger, but for clarity, for closure. The vineyard's lights dimmed as the night grew late, the crowd thinning as guests drifted to their cars. Marcus and Javier sat at a table, their hands entwined, the weight of the day settling into a quiet calm. But Marcus's eyes kept finding Evelyn, who lingered near the dance floor, her face a mix of pride and unease. He knew they couldn't leave things unresolved. "I need to talk to her," Marcus said, his voice low. Javier nodded, his thumb brushing Marcus's hand. "Want me there?" Marcus smiled, grateful. "Not this time, but I'll be okay." He kissed Javier softly, then stood, crossing the pavilion to where Evelyn stood, clutching a glass of champagne. "Mom," he said, his voice steady but gentle. "We need to finish this." Evelyn's eyes met his, and for the first time that night, she looked small, vulnerable. "Marcus, I didn't mean to hurt you. I thought I was helping." "Helping?" Marcus's voice was soft but firm. "You invited the man who broke me to my wedding. How was that supposed to help?" Evelyn's lips trembled. "I saw how much you loved him back then. When he reached out, he sounded so sincere. He said he'd been through therapy, that he wanted to apologize. I thought if you saw him, saw that he's just a man, not a monster, you could let go of the pain." Marcus's chest ached. He wanted to be angry, but her words carried a weight he hadn't expected. "Mom, that wasn't your call to make. You didn't live through those nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering why I wasn't enough. You didn't see the work it took to trust Javier, to believe in love again." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "I know I messed up. I wanted you to have closure." I wanted you to be free. Marcus exhaled, his anger softening but not gone. I am free, not because of Derek, but because of me, because of Javier. You need to trust me to handle my own past. Evelyn nodded, wiping her eyes. I'm so proud of you, Marcus. I'm scared of losing you. You won't, Marcus said, his voice breaking. But you have to respect my boundaries. This day was supposed to be about me and Javier, not about fixing old wounds. They stood in silence, the music fading into the background. Marcus felt the weight of their history, years of love, support, but also misunderstandings. Evelyn had always been his rock, but she'd misjudged this time. He reached out, pulling her into a hug. I love you, Mom, but don't do this again. She clung to him, nodding. I promise. As Marcus returned to Javier, he felt a shift. The confrontation with Derek, the conversation with Evelyn, they'd been necessary, but they weren't the heart of this day. The heart was Javier, waiting for him with a smile that made the world feel right again. The next morning, Marcus and Javier woke in their hotel room, sunlight streaming through the curtains. They'd planned a quiet day before their honeymoon in Costa Rica, but the events of the wedding still lingered. Over coffee, Marcus told Javier everything. Derek's betrayal, Evelyn's misguided invitation, the years of healing. Javier listened, his hand never leaving Marcus's. I wish I'd known, Javier said, his voice soft. I would have kicked Derek out myself. Marcus laughed, the sound lighter than he'd felt in days. You already did in your own way. That moment at the reception, when you stood up for me, it meant everything. Javier's eyes softened. You're my family now, Marcus. No one gets to hurt you on my watch. They spent the day walking through Sonoma's vineyards, hand in hand, the tension of the wedding fading with each step. Marcus felt a clarity he hadn't known he needed. Derek was gone, not just from the wedding but from his heart. Evelyn's mistake, though painful, had forced him to face his past head-on, to claim his strength in a way he hadn't before. But one question lingered. Why had Derek come? Marcus didn't want to care, but a part of him wondered if there was more to the story. Had Derek really changed? Or was this just another game? The thought nagged at him, but he pushed it aside. Today was for him and Javier, for their future. As they sat on a hill overlooking the valley, Javier pulled Marcus close. What are you thinking about? He asked. Marcus smiled, resting his head on Javier's shoulder. How lucky I am. How strong we are together. Javier kissed his forehead. Always. Back at the hotel, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Kayla. Check your email. Derek sent something. Marcus's stomach dropped. He hadn't expected this, not after last night. Javier raised an eyebrow, sensing his unease. You want to look? Marcus hesitated, then nodded. They opened the email together. It was short, no subject line, just a few lines from Derek. I'm sorry for showing up. I thought I could make things right, but I see now I was wrong. You've built something beautiful, Marcus. Be happy. Marcus stared at the words, his emotions a tangle. Part of him wanted to believe Derek, but another part, the part that remembered the lies, didn't trust it. Javier's hand found his. You don't owe him anything, he said. Not a response, not forgiveness. Nothing. Marcus nodded, deleting the email. You're right. Let's move on. But as they packed for their honeymoon, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. Derek's words, Evelyn's choices, they were threads of a story still unfolding. He didn't know what was coming, but with Javier by his side, he felt ready for anything. The Costa Rican sun burned bright as Marcus and Javier stepped off the plane, the air thick with the scent of jungle and sea. Their honeymoon was meant to be an escape, a chance to leave the wedding's drama behind. But as they settled into their beachfront villa, Marcus's mind kept drifting back to Derek's email. The words felt like a loose thread, tugging at his peace. Javier noticed, as always. Over dinner, with the ocean crashing nearby, he set down his fork. "You're still thinking about him, aren't you?" Marcus sighed, pushing his plate away. Not him exactly, just why he came. Why he thought he could just show up and say sorry like it erases everything. Javier leaned forward, his eyes steady. Maybe he's trying to rewrite his own story. But that's not your problem, Marcus. You don't have to carry his guilt. Marcus nodded, but the unease lingered. He didn't want Derek to have power over him, but the unanswered questions felt like a weight. He changed the subject, focusing on Javier's stories of their plans. Ziplining through the rainforest, snorkeling in turquoise waters. For a while it worked. They laughed, planned, fell into each other's arms under the stars. But the shadow of the wedding followed them. 2 days into the honeymoon, Marcus got another text from Kayla. "Mom's been trying to reach you. She's upset about the wedding." Marcus's stomach twisted. He hadn't spoken to Evelyn since their tense conversation at the reception. He'd needed space, but now guilt crept in. He called her, stepping onto the villa's balcony to keep Javier from hearing the strain in his voice. "Marcus." Evelyn's voice was soft, shaky. "I've been thinking about what you said. I was wrong to invite Derek. I see that now." Marcus leaned against the railing, the ocean stretching endless before him. "Why didn't you tell me he reached out, Mom? Why keep it a secret?" Evelyn hesitated. "I didn't want to reopen old wounds." He sounded so broken. He said he'd been in therapy, that he regretted everything. "I thought if he saw you happy, it would help him move on. And maybe help you, too." Marcus closed his eyes, frustration rising. "You don't get to decide what helps me. That's not your job anymore." "I know," Evelyn said, her voice breaking. "I just want you to be okay. I've always wanted that." Marcus softened, hearing the pain in her voice. "I am okay, Mom. Because of Javier, because of the life I've built. But you have to let me handle my own past. No more surprises." Evelyn promised to respect his boundaries, and they hung up with a fragile peace. Marcus returned to Javier, who was reading on the couch. "Everything good?" Javier asked. "Yeah," Marcus said, sitting beside him, "just tying up loose ends." The honeymoon was everything they'd dreamed, days of adventure, nights of intimacy. But as they returned to their life in Oakland, Marcus felt a shift. The wedding had forced him to confront not just Derek, but his own resilience. He'd spent years defining himself by his pain, but now with Javier, he saw a different story, one of strength, love, and choice. Back home, Marcus and Javier settled into their routine, but the email from Derek still lingered in Marcus's mind. He didn't want to respond, didn't want to give Derek any more space in his life. But a part of him wondered if closure meant understanding why Derek had come, what he'd hoped to gain. One evening, as they cooked dinner together, Marcus brought it up. "I keep thinking about Derek's email, not because I want him back, but because I don't understand him. Why show up after all this time?" Javier stirred the sauce, his voice calm. "Maybe he's trying to make peace with himself, but you don't have to be part of that. You've already closed that chapter." Marcus nodded, chopping vegetables with more force than necessary. "You're right. I hate that he still gets to me." Javier set down the spoon and pulled Marcus into a hug. "He doesn't. Not really. You're stronger than you know." The words settled Marcus, grounding him. He didn't need Derek's reasons. He had Javier, their home, their future. But as they ate dinner, laughing over stories of their trip, Marcus's phone buzzed again. Another email from Derek. This time, it wasn't an apology, it was a request to meet. Marcus stared at the email, his fork frozen midair. Javier glanced over, his brow furrowing. "What is it?" "It's Derek," Marcus said, his voice tight. "He wants to meet. Says he needs to explain himself in person." Javier's jaw clenched, but he kept his tone even. "What do you want to do?" Marcus set his phone down, his mind racing. Part of him wanted to ignore it, to delete the email and move on. But another part, the part that had spent years wrestling with Derek's betrayal, wanted answers. Not for Derek's sake, but for his own. "I think I need to see this through," he said finally. "Not for him. For me." Javier nodded, his hand finding Marcus's. "Then we do it together." They arranged to meet Derek at a quiet coffee shop in Oakland, a neutral space far from the vineyard's charged memories. Marcus's stomach churned as they walked in, Javier's presence a steady anchor. Derek was already there, sitting at a corner table, his hands wrapped around a mug. He looked different. Older, less confident, the charm that once drew Marcus and now faded. "Marcus," Derek said, standing as they approached. His eyes flicked to Javier, then back. "Thanks for coming." Marcus sat, Javier beside him, their knees touching under the table. "Say what you need to say," Marcus said, his voice calm but firm. Derek exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I know I don't deserve this. Showing up at your wedding was a mistake. I thought if I saw you, I could make things right. But I see now how selfish that was." Marcus's chest tightened, but he stayed silent, letting Derek continue. "I was a mess back then," Derek said, his voice low. "I didn't know how to love you the way you deserved. I've spent years regretting it, trying to fix myself. When your mom reached out, I thought it was a chance to apologize, to show you I'm not that guy anymore. But I didn't think about what it would do to you." Marcus leaned back, processing. The words sounded sincere, but he'd heard them before years ago, when Derek's apologies were just a prelude to more lies. "Why now?" Marcus asked. "Why after all this time?" Derek's eyes dropped to his mug. "Because I saw you with Javier. I saw how happy you are, how strong you've become. It made me realize how much I lost, and how much I hurt you. I needed you to know I'm sorry, not for my sake, but for yours." Javier's hand tightened on Marcus's, a silent reminder of their shared strength. Marcus took a breath, his voice steady. "I don't need your apology, Derek. I needed it 6 years ago, when I was picking up the pieces of myself. But I've built a life without you. I'm happy. I'm whole. And that's not because of you. It's despite you." Derek nodded, his face tight with emotion. "I know. I'm glad you found someone who loves you right." Marcus glanced at Javier, whose eyes were fierce with pride. "I did," Marcus said, "and I don't need anything else from you." They stood, leaving Derek at the table. As they stepped outside, the Oakland sun warm on their faces, Marcus felt a weight lift. The questions he'd carried for years didn't matter anymore. Derek's reasons, his regrets, they were his burden, not Marcus's. Back home, Marcus and Javier sat on their couch, the city lights sparkling through the window. Evelyn had sent a text earlier, apologizing again and promising to respect Marcus's boundaries. He'd replied with love, but also clarity. Their relationship would need time to heal. She'd agreed, grateful for his honesty. As Javier pulled Marcus close, their fingers laced together, Marcus felt a peace he hadn't known was possible. The wedding, Derek's appearance, Evelyn's mistake. They'd all tested him, but they'd also shown him his own strength. He wasn't defined by his past, but by the love he chose every day. "You okay?" Javier asked, his voice soft. Marcus smiled, leaning into him. "More than okay. I'm home." The journey hadn't been easy, but it had led him here, to a life built on trust, resilience, and a love that could withstand any storm. As they sat together, the world quiet except for their breathing, Marcus knew he'd found his truth, and it was enough.